Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this training webinar on the projects module in SAP Business One. My name is Gantt Chart. Let's have a look at the agenda. So we're going to have a run through the overall project management module and then dig a bit into the details and then look at how the billing works, have a look at the Gantt chart capabilities and then some of the reporting. Okay, so let's start. So the project module is basically a centralized data management system that allows you to monitor tasks and the progress of those tasks and general information relating to a project. It allows you to manage all documents relating to a project. So, any transactional data such as invoices and purchase orders, even production orders, and so on. And then there is a billing wizard that enables you to create AR documents in a batch. A project setup can either be an internal project, which means there's no customer or supplier, or it can be an external project where you have either selected a customer or a supplier. The project master data is the central location for all things relating to a project. This includes the stages and the related schedules, the sales and purchasing documents, the inventory transactions, the production transactions. You can also track issues, activities, the budgets and actuals reporting, and more importantly, the actual project is also linked to a financial project in the accounting side. A project can also have multiple sub-projects, and within those sub-projects, you can have further sub-projects, so you can have multiple levels, and each one of those sub-projects can have their own costs, and you can view the overall financials or the financials for the individual sub-project. Just a note, this is not the standard SAP Business One projects module is not a job costing module. It does not handle things such as estimating or quoting, work in progress. It won't handle things like revenue recognition, milestone billings, or allocation of resources to tasks. If you're requiring functionality of this nature, then you'd be looking at a third-party solution, and we're more than happy to sort of discuss your requirements and see what would be the appropriate solution. So let's now look at the system. So the project module was introduced by SAP, I think, in version 9.2. So it's a relatively new module. In fact, it's probably the newest module that SAP has delivered in SAP Business One. And you may not see that particular module visible in your system if it hasn't been activated. Now, word of caution, it's a one-way activation process. So once you activate the projects module, you cannot deactivate it. So if you are just wanting to look at it and just have a bit of a play, then do it in a test system. Don't do it in your live. So to activate the projects module, you can do it under administration, system initialization, and in company details. There is a checkbox down here, enable project management. So once you've ticked this box, as you can see, I cannot untick it. It's a one-way activation process. And once you've ticked it, then you'll see the projects module within the menu system. So let's have a look at a project screen and see what we can do in there. So just going into projects management and project, and I'm just going to go and look at an existing one. So as I said earlier, a project can either be internal or external. And if it is external, then you can select a customer or supplier, whereas if it's internal, then those options don't apply. Once you've set up the project, you can assign, the contact person, the salesperson, and so on. And then you can also define whether the project has got multiple sub-projects within it or not. And then on the right side here, you give it a name. The project number is an internal number, and then the project can have various statuses. So when you first create a project, it's got a status of started, and then if you at some point, let's say, put the project on hold and you're going to continue later, you can set the status to paused. If you're going to put the project on hold and it's not going to resume, then the status is stopped. And when you finally complete the project, then you change the status to finished. Now, you cannot change the status to finish if the individual stages of the project are not completed. So that's one of the prerequisites to get the overall project status to finished. There's a start date and a due date. Now, any transactions you perform within the project need to fall within these dates, and likewise, the task that you allocate to the project also need to fall within these dates. This is just information here. It says there's 2 open activities against this project. Percentage completion is saying 5%, and that's based on the stages that you've defined and the percentage completion on those stages. And as I said earlier, there's also a link back to a financial project. So this is under your, under administration, setup, financials, you've got projects. So this is where you can need to define a financial project linked to this particular project. So then just going through the various tabs. So, the general overview tab just, it's got some base information, industry, risk level, some general comments about it. And if this was a multi-level or project with sub-projects, then this is where you'd you'd see that information. And we'll look at a project with sub-projects a bit later on. So let's look at the stages, because that's really where most of the functionality and most of the work would happen. So you've got multiple stages. These stages are all user definable. So if you want to sort of go into the administration setup and project management, and in here you can define your list of stages. Okay, so you can have your own list of stages, and then for each stage, then you can also define a task. And so these are also user definable. You can have your own list of tasks relating to a stage. You have a description, which is free-form text. You can type in what the description of the task is, or the stage is. The plan cost, so how much you expect how much you expect to spend on this particular phase. And then these next sort of 4 columns are showing actual data linked to these particular stage. So the actual invoiced amount, the open accounts receivable amounts, the invoiced AP amount, and the open AP amount. So the open AR amount would be a sum of your quotes, orders, and deliveries, and the invoiced one is the actual AR invoice. Likewise, on the AP side, the same sort of process follows. And then you set, for each task, you set a percentage. So when a task is complete, the overall project then also reflects that percentage completion. So as you sort of mark additional stages as completed, you'll notice that the overall sort of percentage completion also goes up. You can have a different owner for each one of these stages. So, different people may be responsible for different stages, then you set those up. And then you've got the ability to define up to 4 dependencies. So, these are stages that need to be closed before you can close this particular stage. So I cannot go in and say this stage is complete if all the prior stages with dependencies are not marked as finished. So that's the purpose of defining the dependencies. And also when you've defined the dependencies, you'll see those links in the Gantt chart as well. Okay, so that's the various stages. But what happens then is if you highlight a particular stage, in the bottom section here, there's a number of other areas that you can view. So you can maintain a list of issues. So if I go in and drill on that, you can see this is a particular issue that's already been closed. So when you're defining issues, once again, you can define your own list of areas these issues belong to, your own list of priorities. Then you have a general remarks. In this case, I've got a issue that says I need, access to site, and then who's responsible, who entered it, when it was entered, and if there are any costs relating to this particular issue. And then what happens is when you've completed the task, you need to then link a solution. Now, this solution is related to your service module and the service knowledge base. So under your service and solutions knowledge base, this is where you've got to define, the solutions for the issues and then link those solutions back into the issue itself, and then you can drill down and see what the issue was or how it was resolved. And as I said, you can have multiple issues, and then they can either be open or closed. You can attach documents, so any sort of relevant documentation, just like in your sales and purchasing areas, you've got the ability to make attachments. The same thing here. You can also attach documentations here. In this case, it's just a logo of SAP Business One, but you can sort of attach any type of document there. And then the documents is where you link transactions. So here in this case, we've got a couple of sales orders, a few AR invoices, and also an AP invoice. And that's where these various figures are coming from, the invoiced amount, and so on, and the AP amount. These are coming based on what's been linked in this documents section in the bottom area. You can also link work orders and activities. So let's look at activities firstly. So here we've got an activity that has been linked back into the project. If I go into the activity, one of the important things to note is that when you create the activity, in the other details area, you can also link an activity type. And what then happens is when you run your billing, you can also then generate an invoice based on this activity. So the activity type list is maintained under administration, setup, and project management and activity types. In here, you can define all different types of activities. So I've got two activities. One's called consulting, and the other is called leave. Well, the consulting one is linked to an actual labor item, and I'm also marking it as a chargeable item. The second one I've not marked as chargeable, but I've marked it as an absence item. So when you're putting these activities in, if you do put an activity type, then you can pull that information when you run your billing. All right, so let's come back to work orders. So if let's go in and look at a different stage. So here's a stage where I've got a work order linked. I can see all the different materials and resources that have gone into making this particular item. And so you can track linked production directly from the projects area. And we can look at this other one. There's a couple of different project work orders happening. So when it comes to raising a transaction and linking it to a task, the way it works is, so let's have a look at, say on this phase, I'm going to enter another sales order. Now I could go in here and say create. Well, I can link an existing one. I cannot raise a new one from here. I can link an existing sales order from here. Or if I go into the sales area, and let's say I'll pick my customer Mexitech. Let's put in a couple of items in, and then in here I can link a project code and the stage that this particular task is related to. Okay, so let's say I wanted to link it to stage number 3 here. So I go in and say, show me all the stages, and I'm going to link it to stage 3. And likewise on this other one as well, I want to link it to stage 3. So this was, $897 worth of kit is going into a sales order. And if I add that, the stage, and let's also link it at that level. If I come back into my project and if I just refresh it, and then you see that there's your sales orders that have been linked automatically because of you've posted that transaction and linked it to the particular stage and to that project. So what you can then also do is mark various transactions as chargeable or non-chargeable. So if I tick those, then these are ones that will come up in the billing visit. If it's not ticked to be charged, then they would not come up in the billing visit. So the other way of doing it is if you just went in and let's say we'll do a purchase type transaction this time. So if I go in and raise a purchase transaction and let's pick an item, and if I don't link the particular task to a stage, I just go in and just link it to an overall project. So no particular task has been linked. And if I add that, if I come back later on into the project and if I reopened it, what will happen is when I open it, it'll say, well, you've got some unassigned transactions in the system. Do you want to assign them? It's basically saying, well, you've got a project, you've got a purchase order linked to a project, but you haven't really specifically assigned it to a task or to a stage. And do you want to do that now? So if I say yes, it'll list me that transaction. So that's the purchase order that I just entered. And I can then go in and say, well, actually, yeah, this is an expense as part of the project launch section. And I assign it like that. So then when we look at stage 3, there's that purchase order that that we've just added. And you can also then see it starts sort of building up the information in terms of OpenAR and OpenAP transactions. So with regards to production orders, it's the same sort of concept. So in here, you can go in and say, I want to create a new work order linked to this particular stage or task. And then you go in and pick the item you want to produce. And you link that to the project as well. And you add that in. So now we've got that particular work order linked to that particular task. And you can see the details as well. And what happens then is, because it's a work order that's linked to the project, the system knows about that. And when you complete the work order, so let's say I'm just going to report the completion. At the time of you having reported the completion, it comes up with this message that says, items or resources have been consumed. Do you want to create a delivery note or a goods issue? So it's just basically saying you've produced something relating to a project. Do you want to now consume it in the project, which means goods issue it? Or do you want to deliver it to a customer because, you know, this is, you've produced it for the customer? So if I say yes, then it gives me the option of generating either a delivery note or a goods issue for that particular production. So if I say, let's say I say goods issue because I want to write it off, it's already linked to the project for me. And if I add that, so now I've done a goods issue of the material that I just produced. And we can then, you know, close this off as well. But if I then come back into the production, it then also recognizes that, you know, you've got all these transactions relating to the production order, the goods issue, the goods receipts. And if you want to link those, then you can go and assign those as well. But otherwise, you can see on that phase, there's the work order, and there's the goods issue that we've done relating to that particular project. So while we're here, we'll also create a activity. If I go into the activities and if I say new activity, let's say it's a sales related account management, remarks, work on site, and let's say we started at, so you see that, let's say we started on the 1st and we started at 2 o'clock and we finished at 4 o'clock. And in here, I can then say the activity type is consultant and link it to the financial project and to that stage. So now that's also linked up. Yeah, so that's also now available there. And once again, as I said earlier, we can then use that as part of the billing. So if we just move to the next tab in here, which is the summary tab, this is where you can see that overall financial situation. So the budget being 21,000. So this is the budget from a cost perspective. That's essentially a sum of these planned costs, right? If you add all those up, you get 21,000. The open AP is coming from the sum of the stages and the open AP there. And likewise, you know, the total AP is the sum, or you got the invoice and then you got the total. And then you got variance, which is basically a budget minus total. And then it shows the percentage. And if you were doing a multi-level project, then, you know, you'd see the budget situation for the project, sub-project, and then the overall project as well. Likewise, on the profit value side, the 30,000 is a typed in number. So I've sort of said, you know, I'm expecting, you know, $30,000 worth of revenue on this particular job. So far, I've billed 2,700. So far there's open amounts of 2,700. I've invoiced 1,100, and then there's the total, and then once again we've got the variance, and then you got the accumulated. And on the work order costs, you can see the actual component costs, what the resourcing costs were on the production orders, and then the overall cost of items that have been produced on this particular task or on this particular project. You can put some general remarks as well as have some overall attachments against the job. So yeah, I mean, the main areas that you'll be using on the projects is the stages and the summary. The summary is more for viewing the position, and the stages is where you perform most of the tasks. Once you've defined your stages at the beginning, you can also then view this information in a Gantt format. So if I go in and say, let's have a look at the Gantt chart, you get a bit of a visual here that says, that task's now 100% complete. That one's 100% complete. The overall project is 15% complete. These are the tasks that haven't been started or not completed yet. You can move the tasks around. You can say, I want to do it sooner. I want to do it a bit later. The task is going to take longer to complete, and it's going to start a bit later. You can do all those things here. And what you can also do is zoom in a little bit more and then see the data, on the dates a bit closer. Or, if you want to go back to a more summarized view, you can also do that. Okay, so this the Gantt chart is more of an overall planning, and you can move things around, but what it doesn't, and when you move things around, then this also then affects the dates back in the project. Of course, if this is in the initial planning, if you've moved some things and now your tasks are now not falling within the date ranges that have already been previously defined, then you might get an error, but this is more for the initial planning that you do. So let's now have a look at a project that's got sub-projects. So I'm just going to move a couple of tasks back. So, I mean, here's one that's an internal project only, and I don't even have a financial project link, so it doesn't necessarily have to have a financial project. If I move back one more, here's one that's got sub-projects as well. All right, so this project installed 2 new servers, 1 printer. Project will be phased into 3 sub-projects, and you can see here that the first phase has been 10% completed. The others haven't been started yet. If I go into the sub-projects area, this is where I can see those sub-projects. Even if I have sub-projects, I can still have stages at the parent project level as well. So I don't have to just have a sub-project and then not have any tasks at the overall. If you go into the summary, you can see the overall position of the project. And that's sort of a roll-up of costs from all the sub-projects. If we then drill into one of the sub-projects, you can then see the various stages that belong to that sub-project, as well as the summary position of the sub-project itself. Okay, so if I then look at the project overview, I can get a bit more of an overall picture of what's happening with this project, when various tasks are happening, what tasks have been completed, and then I can look at it at different levels as well. So each sub-project can then have their own status of start, stopped, paused. or rather the sub-projects can either be open or closed. And within that, you've got the stages and your summary situation, and you can then look at the overview of just that particular sub-project on its own as well. So that's the concept around sub-projects. Let's now look at the billing process. So the billing visit is what you'd use to bill anything relating to the project. Now, one of the things you can also do in terms of billing for time is enter timesheets. So we've looked at entering activities, and those can be picked up for billing, but you can also go into in the human resources area. You've got this timesheet function, and in here you can go in and enter a timesheet, add a date, start, finish. Once again, you've got that activity type, which we saw earlier with the activities as well, and then assign to a project, an item, and the duration. So you can go in and enter these timesheets, and these also flow into the billing visit. So the billing itself, allows you. What it basically does is accumulates any accounts payable invoices, any HR timesheets, any AR quotes, orders, orders, deliveries. You can look at work orders, activities, and then based on that, you can generate either accounts receivable invoices, or you can create deliveries that then can be converted into an AR invoice. So let's now look at how the billing visit would work. So you can go into the project management area and run the billing document generation visit from there. And then from here, you can say, what are you trying to create? Which customer is it for? What's the financial project? And so on. Now, you can only run the billing for one project stage at a time. So you cannot just run a mess, billing generation and say, show me anything that's can be billed. The way it works is you go in. The easiest way to show this is if I went into an existing project and if I opened up one of the stages which I want to bill. Let's say this stage here, which has got production orders as well as a bunch of sales orders and purchase orders. I can go in and right-click on it and say Billing Document Generation Visit, and it pre-populates a bunch of things for me. So it's probably already open. Let's do it again. Next, here we go. So we can choose what type of transaction we want to create. We can then, it's already pre-selected for me the financial project, the project number, and the project stage. I can put some date filters in if I want, and then I can select what types of transactions I want to include in the billing run. And if I want to then, from an AR perspective, which base document I want to convert into an invoice. So then when we go next, it gives us a list of transactions that could be potentially invoiced. You can then pick the ones you want to bill. So you can see with the activities, it's showing you how much time the person had worked, but it doesn't set a quantity. So then you can go in and say what quantities you want to bill there. So let's say I'm going to bill 2 hours there, and let's say 3 hours there. And when I click on finish, it basically opens up an AR invoice ready for you to post. And then in here, then you can go in and set prices for the labor items. And if you're happy with all that, you can then create the actual AR invoice. And that's it. That's generated the invoice. And if we then sort of refresh the screen here, you'll probably see what's been invoiced and all that kind of stuff. So that's how this works. We look at the summary. We can probably see that more AR transactions have been posted, less, and then the open AR has been reduced. And likewise on the stages as well. On stage here, we no longer have any open AR transactions because we've billed everything. And then once we're happy with what we've done, and we can then close off this particular stage as well, and then proceed or progress to the next stage. That concludes the presentation for today. As always, if you are interested in learning a bit more about the session today, then contact your account manager.